Chris Carrapetta is an alt country and Americana artist from Sydney who released the EP I'm Not a Stranger last year and recently released the quite lovely album, Nothing Left to Lose. And I'm going to ask him all about it. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Sophie, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I've had a great time listening to this album, which is thought-provoking, but also like a balm, a musical balm in so many ways. So there's a lot in it to love. But I wanted to start by saying that although it's the title of a song on the album, Nothing Left to Lose is also the statement of intent for the album, I think. So I'm wondering when you arrived at the point that you felt like you had nothing left to lose.
Feels like a perpetual state sometimes, but I'm joking. But some days,
existential statement though.
I don't know. Yeah, on some levels, sometimes I could suggest that that's probably the case, but no. When I arrived at that, well, I think when you kind of get to a point where everything feels like it's just a bit harder than it should be and nothing quite seems to go your way, and you just got to trying to break through that and find new ways to get on top of things, and just so I think that's probably where that was coming from at the time. It's been a while. A lot of those songs I wrote quite a while ago now, so it's sort of having to revisit some of the thoughts it's a bit vague sometimes compared to, it's not as fresh in my mind as it was back then, obviously. So but and I've been playing those songs for quite a while, so they've taken on new meanings as well as they've evolved. So
right. Do you ever feel like as a songwriter that you have nothing left to lose, that you feel like you've kind of exhausted some opportunities or ideas, and it's just like, well, I'm here at the ground level and I'm going to build myself up again as a songwriter?
Well, I think you've always got nothing left to lose. And I feel that I'm always throwing myself out there. Most of the songs come from a real place, things that I've lived, and I feel like if you're being authentic and genuine, that's part of the journey, I think. And finding a way to do that in a way that people can connect to as well and connect with it's not easy. Not everyone can do it, and I feel like I'm doing okay at it. I don't think I'm it's always a work in progress. It's something you aspire to do better next time, as well.
The songs on the album are a very honest examination of experiences and emotions, your experiences and emotions, I think. Have you always been like that as a songwriter from your very first song?
I think early on, because I started writing a lot of stuff in my late teens, early 20s, and there was elements of that. But I think once I got past that point, then I definitely felt that was where I felt more, I could connect with the songs if I felt they were coming from a real place rather than a story as such. I don't feel like I'm a storyteller so much, but it's usually coming from a place of real experience. Yeah.
And do you find that the audience connects to that as well? Like that it's almost like an invitation to them to come up and tell you that it's connected with them or elements of their own lives?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily seeking that. I just think this is my story. I'm putting it out there. This is the format and forum that I choose to do that. And, if people find something in that, then that's great. And, there have been many over the years and still are. So, that's kind of where I feel comfortable. So I'm going to keep plodding along that path.
Yeah. I don't know that it's plodding so much. It seems to be flowing very nicely.
Yeah.
What was the first song you wrote for the album?
It probably very well could be that one, actually. No, it's not actually. Or is it? Yeah, it probably is. Yeah, I think it is actually. That probably was that was kind of the Kickstarter. Yeah.
So you said, you wrote these songs quite a while ago and you've played them quite a bit since. Do you find, once you've committed them to an album, obviously they're on the album. Are there any that since you've played them a bit now, you think, oh, maybe I didn't want that on the album? Or are there songs that you left off the album that you wish you'd put on?
No, I think that's the right balance of songs. Like, Yeah, I mean, I think now that because I mean, for a long time I played them kind of solo as well. So I mean, I did occasionally do band gigs when I lived in the mountains and around the time when I wrote them originally. And so I got to play them a few times, but it was a kind of a long time between doing that and when I actually finally got around to recording it. And so I'd had a bit of time to be with them for a long time, and I always knew where I wanted them to go ultimately in terms of the arrangements and the production. And I think it's about right with where it's ended up. But no, I think it, like, if anything, the most recent song that's on that collection, which is Making Me Smile on the Miracle Mile, that was kind of the last song that I wrote of that batch, and it probably least fitted with the rest of the stuff that's there, but it somehow still, I found a way to make it work with everything. And I was going to hold that back and keep that for something later, but I thought, no, it was a strong song, and I felt I had enough people around me telling me it was a good enough song to be included, so I kind of ran with that. So yeah.
And I actually did have a question already written about that song because it is a suburb in Sydney, in the inner west of Sydney, that has quite a few music venues.
Yep.
So that might be one reason to prompt it. But what prompted you to write a song about a suburb?
I'd heard a couple other songwriters write songs about Marrickville particularly, and I thought, as a bit of fun, I want to see if I could do it. I've never tried to do that per se, and so it was the kind of song that wrote itself in about 15, 20 minutes, which is fair. It's fairly rare because a lot of songs for me are long, drawn out processes. You know, they're not always immediate, and that one was certainly one that was. It just kind of fell out of me. It just appeared. I channeled something, and there it was. So on that particular day, but and in fact, I was sitting right pretty much as I am right now talking to you when I did it. So yeah, but yeah.
One wonders if, because as you said, you sort of set yourself the task of doing it. You thought other people have done this, I'm going to give it a go, whether that actually freed you a little bit for the song to come out quickly.
Well, I think it did. And I think once I kind of, because I'm not someone who writes to a title or like that's like I said, that's completely unconventional for the way I would normally write. So as I said, it was more of a challenge than anything, just to see how that would go. And I said, once I kind of had that line, the Making Me Smile on the Marrickville Mile, it kind of, as I said, that was the catalyst to kickstart it, and off it went.
Now you
kind of wrote itself from there.
Yeah, it sounds like you co-written at least one of the songs on the album, which is Golden Light. Do you co-write much?
I've dabbled in it. I don't generally. That was a song that I was sort of tinkering with that night, and I got Loretta in to just see if she could add anything of use to it. And so it was just sort of something I was strumming along one night, just seeing where it would go, and it kind of, she added some bits that I wouldn't have necessarily, come up with, but it was the core of the song was there, but there was some collaborating on that. So
So I guess songwriter, and I hear this from other songwriters, that having a co-writer can just bring a different perspective and sometimes solve a logjam that you're in. Yeah,
because I said, but considering, like I said earlier, most of the songs are coming from my personal experience or take on things, it's not an easy thing to allow other people into that process necessarily. And it's not, as I said, I've done it a few times over the years, and some good things have come from it. It's not something I don't necessarily go seeking it out, but if it the right place and right time and it happens to work, then great. And if it doesn't, then I'll keep going, the way I normally do, I suppose. But I want to be able to co-write more as well. That's something I feel like, particularly in this case where it's a solo project, I guess, and it's driven by me. But if I was in a band context, well, that would probably be, or if I was writing as part of a band, well, that might be a very different experience.
And you do have a background working with others. You were in a duo at one point. Do you miss a band environment or a duo environment at least?
I really love playing with other people and other musicians. I think that's probably my favorite way of making music. Like most of the solo thing is out of necessity more than anything else, but it's always my preference to be collaborating with other musicians, even if I'm not the center of the project. That's cool. I've done that too plenty of times, and I do that currently. So but just being in a room with other musicians and seeing what can happen is always a lot of fun for me. Just to see where that goes and see what you can create,
Yeah.
But yeah.
And the sound on the album is a big sound, actually. So it does feel like there were quite a few people either in the room, I don't know if you recorded live, or at least coming into the studio.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of layers. There's a lot of instruments, and oh, look, in a perfect world, it would have been done in the studio where I could have had everyone together, but that little pandemic thing kind of got in the way of that. But I think in some ways, whilst that is probably my preferred way to record, generally it's not always possible, and finding a space and all that to do that is but it was kind of a case of building it up from the ground when I'd already done a lot of kind of basic demos of the songs and did some stuff myself and brought that to the sessions. But it kind of all ultimately started from Dean, who recorded and produced the record with me. It was, he's got a recording studio in his house, and we just sort of said, well, let's just try a couple of songs and see what we can do with that. He was keen to, we've played in bands together. We've been friends for a long time, and he knows what I do, and I trust him, and we have a good friendship and relationship and understanding musically. So I always knew something good would come of it, but it was still a case of let's just see where it goes and have a bit of fun. And thankfully the results are pretty great, and anyone that's heard it has said that too. They've all said, oh no, you did a great job on that. So and I'm very grateful for that. So, yeah.
Well, I couldn't find some producer credits for the album, and you've just mentioned that you did produce it with Dean because you have a background in audio engineering. So I was thinking, at the very least, you must have done some sound engineering on it.
I like I said, yeah, I've never really gone too far into being a sound engineer. I studied it a long time ago, back when I first started playing music, more as just a general thing to have an understanding of the process and be involved in that. But these days I'm a bit more hands-on at home, doing just demos and recordings at home. So when I'm working on song ideas now, I've got the gear to actually capture it and do it as much as I can, to a point where then I can at least take a mostly finished song to someone like Dean or whoever down the track. But at least the essential elements are there. And if we want to retrack stuff or run, some of the stuff that's on the record was stuff I did it here, and we've kept some of the takes or the essential parts, and then we've added new bits, and so there's a bit of there's a combination of stuff going on with the final product. But yeah, that's and that's something I want to do more of as well. But living in a small apartment in the inner west is not conducive to making too much loud music too often, but I get away with a fair bit as it is. So yeah.
And you mentioned that the Marrickville a song came out in a rush, and it's not your usual way of writing songs. When you're writing songs, are you someone who starts with like a note on the phone or a voice memo, and then you build it from there?
I have like a huge bank of guitar noodles, chords, riffs. I mostly start from just creating something that sounds interesting, something that I might just be, every time I pick up a guitar, I basically come up with some sort of new idea. Whether or not it's actually that interesting or original is up for debate, but at least it's something that might go somewhere. And if I play things for long enough, some of them stick and some of them sort of disappear. And occasionally I might go back through my phone or the stuff on the computer and dig out something that feels like maybe now's the time to have another go at that. And where am I at with that? Sometimes some of these things could be months or years before I come back to them. So it just depends. So, yeah.
I was talking to an artist recently who has a home studio, and she said she just knows now that when she goes in there, she just starts recording. So like, it doesn't matter, like whatever she's intending to do, She just starts recording in case she captures something.
Okay.
So do you tend to do that?
I do that occasionally. I probably should do it more often, but I know better, but I don't always do it. But yeah, but when I think I'm onto something, I'll start recording and just to have it there as a reference. And sometimes I go back to try and play something that I came up with a while ago, and sometimes I have no idea what I played and I have to actually figure it out. Yeah, sometimes I don't even necessarily successfully figure it out either. So yeah. But but it's a good habit to get into, I think. So yeah, I should do more of that.
And you mentioned, having things from years ago. If you go back to those things that you recorded, whether it's a riff or a chord or a melody, is it that it's actually stayed in your brain and you've been thinking about it? You think, okay, I'm going to retrieve that, or is it just that you're going through what you've recorded and you find things that are a bit older?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I could just be playing the guitar, then suddenly I stumble across that again, or I deliberately go trying to remember a certain song, or as I said, I might have been tinkering with it a little while ago and then didn't get anywhere, so I might come back to it. Or it's the same with lyrics too. I write a lot of lyrics down that I sort of think, oh, that could be useful for something down the track, and I go back to it. But I'm not one of those kind of people that writes prolifically, just words on pages and then can go back to it. There's bits and bobs here and everywhere there, but it's not I'm it's not my forte. Is not the lyric is the harder component of songwriting for me. It always has been. So
yeah,
but as I said, in some cases some days it comes out all in the flash, and then the rest of the time it's weeks, months and years in the making. So yeah.
Well, and I guess when they're hard won, you get to appreciate them more because they have taken quite a bit of work.
Yeah. There's not. I don't have the luxury of having tons of songs to necessarily fall back on, but I've got enough now over my lifetime to at least feel I've got a body of work that's it's there, and I'll always be wanting to add to that. I've got plenty of new song ideas that a few that I've played recently and just experimented with, and there's a few songs there that no one's heard yet, but hopefully soon. But yeah.
Now, you grew up around music because your father was a musician. Was he actually a performing artist?
He was when he was quite young, but as by the time I came along, he was just a home strummer and just loved music, and so there were guitars around and I gravitated towards those, but I've always loved music. I was always, we had a lot of music played in the house, so it was just a natural thing. My brother was also a musician, so so there's definitely a track record of that. Yeah.
And from what I was reading, Neil Young was an early influence on you, but which other artists did you grow up listening to?
Yeah, well, you could say that my family was a bit nuts for Neil Young, and it transcends just my father. My entire extended family on my father's side are all a bit, but he kind of led the way with that. But so yeah, I mean, look, a lot of that 70s folk singer-songwriter stuff, the Eagles, America, Dylan, Zeppelin, that was the kind of stuff that I listened to as a kid. As I got a bit older, obviously, my era was probably the early 90s, mid 90s grunge and alternative rock scene, and that's kind of where my original band and music kind of came out of that. So the sort of music I was making when I was a lot younger was very different to what I'm doing now, but heavier, but still. But at the same time, I still appreciated all sorts of genres, throughout that whole period as well. So, but yeah, my taste mellowed a lot more as I got.
Feel like I'm matured. I think.
Well, yeah, yeah. But I mean, like I said, I like a lot of stuff. So when the whole mid 2000s, rock revival of the Strokes and all that kind of, I mean, that was still, there's been lots.
Yeah. So were you, in the time period you mentioned, were you going and seeing a lot of Australian bands live in pubs back when pubs in the inner city still had music?
Yeah, I've been a big gig goer from as long as I can recall, like from the earliest, because I mean, I was there for that sort of the latter part of the 90s, indie revival, or I guess, there's a lot. I'm noticing how much nostalgia there is lately for that period of time in Australia, and particularly here. And I was there for a lot of that, and there were a lot of great bands that came out of that period that some of them I still listen to a lot today. Some of them don't play anymore; they've broken up, or but there's a lot of bands that have reformed recently. And one particular that comes to mind would be Blue Bottle Kiss. They're a band I used to see quite a lot, and we even managed to put a small gig together with them many years ago, with my first band. And and they've recently did one of those kind of reunion things as well, which was well received. So but lots of that the Home Bake Festival and Big Day Outs and all that. I was at most of those kind of when I was around that time. So
I remember the Home Bake Festival as well. It was a great idea. I kind of wish it would come back sometimes.
Yeah, it was probably one of my favorites. Yeah.
It was in the Domain. It was very handy.
It was, especially when it rained and turned into a mud fight. And that was always fun.
So do you have any favourite venues to play around Sydney?
I mean, I don't play a whole of a lot in Sydney, but even though, I plan to play a lot more now that I've got the record together and kind of a regular band that can do sort of bigger gigs as time goes on. But because I've been mostly doing solo stuff, I mean, I've played at a lot of venues over the years, but more recently it's just been sort of smaller ones, like the Midnight Special particularly. I've done a few shows there, and that's always been a lot of fun, and it suits that smaller, intimate, acoustic kind of show, which I do quite a bit. So.
Yeah, that's a great venue. I'm wondering, probably this is my last question for you. Do you have a favourite song on the album?
Do I have a favourite song? I think This Is Not the End is probably the song I feel most proud of that's on that record. I feel like I've pushed the limits of what I'm capable of doing with that, I think, musically and as a whole. I think it's probably my favorite. Yeah.
And actually, I lied. It's not my last question, because I just realized I wanted to ask you about your singing voice, which is such a lovely voice with such a great tone. I'm wondering if that's the voice you had when you were singing in a band several years ago, or in a duo, or if it's something that you've developed as you've shifted genres.
I think I've always been a reasonably good singer. I never necessarily wanted to be a singer. I think I became a singer back in high school, when the high school covers band I was in, no one else really wanted to sing, and I was probably the best pick, so I kind of rolled with it. I mean, and I've never really formally trained as a singer. I've just kind of done it as part of playing music. And I did find, though, when I lived in the Blue Mountains for quite a few years, that something in my voice changed. I feel like I still haven't quite figured it out, but I have a feeling it has something to do with the altitude. And
right.
I don't know. I felt my voice got stronger in that time. And I feel like maybe it's not as strong now as it was then either. So which kind of gives it more. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but
it's so interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if any other musicians have experienced this, or singers, I should say, but it's a phenomenon I seem to find. But yeah, I don't think it's changed significantly since, but I do feel like I think I was singing the best I'd ever done at that point.
Well, if anyone can report on altitude as a singing influence, I wait to find.
I mean, I don't know. It's not that the mountains are significantly higher, but it is higher than Sydney, and I don't know if there's any merit to it, but it's.
We're now thinking about yodeling coming from the Swiss Alps, and whether that's maybe it's the altitude that makes the yodel.
Yeah, exactly. See, so yeah. There could be some merit in this.
Well, your voice still has a lot of strength to it, and it is on this album, and it's a fantastic album. So I hope people listen to it. And Chris Carrapetta, it's been great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure.